Welcome back to the deep dive. Whenever you read a study or a white paper, you're really just seeing the finished product, the end result.
Right.
But behind that conclusion are dozens of choices, really deliberate, calculated choices the researcher made. You almost never see the philosophical tools they used to build it.
That's a great way to put it. We see the final map, but we don't see the instruments or the deep philosophical choices the mapmaker made before they even started their journey.
Yeah.
So this deep dive is all about uncovering that invisible blueprint. Every single piece of research starts with these fundamental choices about the nature of reality and knowledge itself.
So we think of research as, mapping the terrain. Our mission today is to guide you through those underlying assumptions, the why behind the what.
Exactly.
So you can better analyze the research you see every day. We're going beyond just, quantitative versus qualitative. We're getting to the very bedrock of how we know things.
And to start, we really need to define a key term, a research approach. It's the entire plan. Really, the comprehensive procedure. It spans everything from these big, broad philosophical assumptions all the way down to the nitty-gritty of data collection.
And the decision on which approach to use, it's guided by a set of beliefs the researcher brings to the table.
Absolutely.
These assumptions are often called paradigms, and they're basically answering two huge kind of jargon-heavy questions. What is knowledge and what is reality? But don't worry, we're not going to get bogged down in the jargon. We want to focus on the implications of the answers. And these beliefs, they don't just appear out of thin air. They're influenced by the researcher's discipline, their mentors, their own inclinations.
And their past experiences, for sure. What's so fascinating is that while there's always debate on this stuff in academic circles, the literature pretty consistently points to four major philosophical positions, four paradigms that researchers tend to adopt.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because understanding these four paradigms is kind of like getting a backstage pass to the entire scientific process. So we've got post-positivism, constructivism, transformative, and pragmatism. Let's start with the one that feels most, traditional.
That would definitely be post-positivism. This is the paradigm that's most often associated with the classic scientific method.
The search for objective truth.
Exactly. It's driven by a couple of key concepts. First is determination, which means every effect has a measurable cause. And the second is deductionism.
So you start with a big theory, and then you zoom in to test one tiny piece of it through observation and measurement.
You got it. It's all about structure, control, and theory verification. You design a very specific experiment to see if X caused Y. It's the whole framework of cause and effect.
A causes B.
Right. Post-positivists believe causes probably determine effects. And because of that, the problems they study really reflect this need to identify and assess the causes that influence outcomes. It's what you find in those, tight, structured experiments.
But wait, hold on a second. I have to stop you there because we always link post-positivism to, white lab coats and statistics. But the source material throws a real wrench in that. It says these post-positivist assumptions sometimes align better with qualitative research. How does that work? That seems like a contradiction.
It's a critical point, and it's a great reminder that the method doesn't always strictly define the philosophy.
Okay.
The reason for that distinction is, the core assumption isn't just about using numbers. It's about verification and deduction. So if a researcher starts with a very clear, specific theory.
A hypothesis.
A hypothesis, yes.
Yeah.
And then they use structured data collection, even if it's, say, highly structured qualitative interviews, to deductively prove or disprove that pre-existing theory. Well, philosophically, they're following a post-positivist path.
I see. So they're prioritizing the predefined theory over just discovering what's there.
Precisely. Regardless of whether the data is numbers or words.
That distinction alone is a huge insight. The philosophy dictates the approach, not just the data type. Okay, so now let's go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum with constructivism.
Right.
If post-positivism is about finding the verifiable truth, constructivism sounds like it's about finding multiple subjective realities.
That's a perfect summary. Constructivism is all about understanding, about multiple participant meanings, and the belief that reality is a product of social and historical construction. It leads to theory generation, not verification.
And the implication of that is huge. Constructivists believe people develop their own subjective, varied meanings of their experiences.
So the researcher's role is totally different. They're not trying to cram findings into a few preset boxes. They're looking for the complexity of views, relying as much as they can on how the participants see their own situation.
The methodology itself becomes a tool for empathy then.
It really does. It's about finding nuance.
Okay, next up is the transformative paradigm. This one sounds less about understanding the world and more about actively trying to change it.
That's spot on. Transformative research is explicitly political. It's power and justice-oriented, it's collaborative, and it's change-oriented. The starting belief is that research needs to, well, interfere with politics and political change to confront social oppression.
So the research isn't just an observation, it's an intervention. It has a moral compass.
Absolutely. The study itself contains an action agenda for reform. And this reform might change the lives of the participants, the institutions, and even the researcher.
So for you, the reader, if you see a study that's inherently arguing for a new policy in education or health equity, it probably comes from this framework.
It's very likely. The goal isn't just to find an answer, but to use that finding to justify some kind of systemic change.
And finally, we have pragmatism. The key ideas here are consequences of actions, problem-centered, pluralistic, and real-world practice-oriented.
Pragmatism is different because its assumptions come from actions, situations, and consequences, not just from, antecedent conditions like in postpositivism. Researchers here are intensely focused on applications and solutions to the actual problem.
Utility is the driving force.
Utility is everything.
And this focus on what works, on the solution, that's what makes it the foundation for mixed methods, right?
Exactly. Pragmatism is seen as this really important philosophical basis for mixed methods research because it explicitly says use all available approaches, quantitative, qualitative, whatever. If it helps you solve the problem and derive knowledge, use it.
Okay, so understanding that postpositivism is the blueprint for finding those universal laws.
Yeah.
It makes total sense that its descendant, quantitative methods, has dominated research for so long.
Oh, absolutely. We've seen this history play out. Quantitative social research really took off with the natural sciences in the 19th century, adopting that whole scientific method framework.
And in fields like applied linguistics, it really came of age in the 70s and 80s.
And by the 90s, it was showing growing sophistication, which I have to say was no doubt helped along by the rise of computing power.
That historical snapshot is fascinating to me. That surge in the 70s and 80s, right, as computers were becoming common. Was that just correlation, or did that new sophistication directly come from the tech that could suddenly handle huge data sets?
It's a direct enabler. I mean, quantitative methods, by their very nature, need processing power to make sense of the 6 characteristics that really define them.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's dig into those characteristics. It starts with the most obvious one, using numbers.
Right, but the implication is what matters. Numbers let you make quick comparisons across huge, even unrelated data sets that let you scale up your analysis really fast.
And because numbers dominate, the methodology requires a prior categorization.
Yes. You have to specify your categories, your variables, and your values before you even start collecting data. That decision dominates the entire collection phase.
The third characteristic then shifts the focus to variables rather than cases. So you're not interested in the unique story of one single person.
Right, you're not. You're interested in the common factors, the variables like age, income, education level, that affect an entire group.
Which leads directly to the fourth element. Statistics. It's the specialized language you need to analyze the relationships between all those numbers.
And to figure out if what you're seeing is real or just, due to random chance.
Then there's the push for standardized procedures.
Oh,
this is essential, right? You're trying to eliminate that individual-based subjectivity.
You're trying to make sure every instrument is calibrated the exact same way across all researchers and all subjects. It has to be uniform.
And all of this, all these characteristics, they feed the ultimate goal, the quest for generalizability and universal laws.
Exactly. Numbers, statistics, standardization. It's all part of this drive to find facts that are so stable you can apply them broadly to other people in other situations.
So what does this rigorous framework actually deliver? Supporters would say it's systematic nature.
Oh, absolutely. They emphasize that it is systematic, it's tightly controlled, it's focused, it involves really precise measurement, and it produces reliable, replicable data.
So if you want proof that something works on a massive generalizable scale, This is your gold standard.
It's often considered the gold standard, yes.
But the criticisms are pretty severe. Opponents say this very precise, rigorous system has a huge blind spot. And this is really crucial for you, the reader, to remember.
The criticism is that it's fundamentally reductionist. It flattens complex human experiences into simple data points. It's decontextualized. It strips away all the social and situational nuance.
So in its quest for generalizability, it misses what the numbers actually mean to the people they represent.
It can miss the subjective meanings that participants attach to their own lives, yes.
Okay, now let's pivot completely to the qualitative approach. It's been around for about a century, but its visibility just exploded in the 90s.
And that timing is key. It grew because researchers realized that really complex things like, say, language acquisition or organizational culture, they're so deeply shaped by social and cultural factors that numbers alone just can't capture.
We needed the boots-on-the-ground view to supplement the satellite map.
That's a perfect analogy.
And that need for context dictates the whole structure. It leads to 6 key elements, starting with an emergent research design.
This is a fundamental difference. The study is kept open and fluid. It can respond flexibly to new themes or opinions that just emerge naturally during the investigation. The design adapts to the reality it finds.
Instead of forcing reality into a pre-made grid.
Right. And because of that openness, the nature of data is super wide-ranging. We're talking interviews, documents, field notes, images, anything that provides texture and depth.
And where does this happen? The research setting has to be natural.
It has to be. There's no attempt to manipulate the situation because the whole point is to describe social phenomena just as they happen in their real environment.
Which feeds right into the heart of the approach. Insider meaning.
Yes. Qualitative research is all about the subjective opinions, experiences, and feelings of individuals. The whole goal is to explore how the participant views their own situation. Their perspective is front and center.
And because you're diving so deep into one person's experience, you're almost always working with small sample sizes.
You have to. You sacrifice breadth for depth. You might study one small team for a year to really understand a process, rather than surveying thousands for a single data point.
And finally, wrapping it all up, is the interpretive analysis. This is where the researcher takes all this rich, messy, contextual data and tries to weave it into a coherent story.
Yes, and the outcome is ultimately the product of the researcher's subjective interpretation of that data.
And that interpretive part, it's both its greatest strength and its greatest weakness.
It really is. The strength is its groundedness. Supporters say this deep, real-world interaction is essential for exploring new areas, for distinguishing genuine insights from, just intellectual ideas.
But that subjectivity is exactly what the critics pounce on.
Indeed. Opponents argue that because the researcher plays such a central, subjective role, the final results can be biased towards the researcher's own worldview. They see the approach as lacking rigor and sometimes appearing unprincipled or fuzzy.
So when you read a paper that's criticized for being fuzzy, what they're really saying is the researcher might have cherry-picked quotes or observations that fit their theory without the standardized checks of a quantitative approach.
That's the fear. And let's not ignore a very practical challenge that researchers themselves will admit. Qualitative data processing takes forever. It's incredibly time-consuming to turn hours of interviews into meaningful themes.
So what does this all mean for you, the person reading the research and trying to figure out what to do with it?
It means that research isn't a monolith. It's a spectrum. And it's driven by those deep-seated philosophical beliefs we talked about at the start. You can now trace the chain back.
You can ask, was the researcher aiming for post-positivism's deterministic quest for universal facts using quantitative methods?
Or were they on a constructivist search for multiple subjective truths in context using qualitative methods?
And that understanding is power. It clarifies the limitations and the specific utility of the results you're reading.
Exactly. If a study is quantitative, you know you're getting generalizable measures, but you might be missing the context. If it's qualitative, you're getting deep, rich context, but you shouldn't try to generalize it to the whole world.
Right.
And let's end by bringing it back to the paradigm that tries to reconcile them. Pragmatism. The pragmatists focus on solving real-world problems by using all the tools in the toolbox. They're pluralistic.
And this raises a really important question for you, the listener.
It does. When you're faced with a complex problem in your own life or your work, now that you understand the philosophical stakes and the structural limits of each approach, are you better served by committing to just one method? Say, relying only on the quantitative metrics.
Or By embracing a pluralistic, pragmatic approach, integrating both the satellite maps and the boots on the ground to get a truly comprehensive picture, it's a choice that really defines not just how you research, but maybe even how you live.